and welcome. Join us as we take a look back at the 50th International Eucharistic Congress in Dublin.
And we take you behind the scenes of an amazing week in Ireland.
We'll be your hosts. I'm Alicia Ambrosio.
And I'm Sheridan Sanders.
Is Mahijan, Mahaskaer, Machlanehi, Magun, Gliamer and Cheerna, Dartlacht Mahalu, August Gentar, Mahiru, Manarja, Mahagrahu, Ahirna, Mahagrahu, Ahirna.
Thanks to Tourism Ireland for those spectacular images and also for their support of our coverage of the International Eucharistic Congress. With their help, we were able to send a team over to Ireland to visit several Christian historical sites. And we bring you this special feature on the Moone Cross.
By the middle of the 9th century, Viking ships landed on the coasts and on the riverbanks of Ireland. Many of them moved inland, pillaging the towns and the monasteries that they came across. But what they didn't take, and what has endured for over 1,000 years, are the Irish high crosses, a testament to the vibrancy of an early medieval Christian culture.
So here we are at Moone High Cross, and Moone High Cross is a great example of the high crosses of Ireland. It's the second tallest high cross we have in the country and probably one of the best preserved, because over the centuries the cross itself had collapsed into the ground and fallen with the building, and it was only discovered about 150 years ago under a lot of rubble. So fortunately it meant that the cross itself didn't get weathered over the centuries, so it's a great example of carvings that we have. The cross here itself is it's almost like a picture book of scenes from and stories from the Bible. So what you have is different stories and scenes like Adam and Eve and the forbidden fruit, and the flight from Egypt, and the 12 apostles, and fish and loaves of bread. It was very easy for people to follow, I suppose, and understand the story of the Bible, because not everybody was literate back then, so they couldn't understand or read for themselves. So the crosses generally would have 3 parts to the cross. So you'd have the base, the centre and the capstone. The cross here was actually originally, when they only found 2 parts of it, they had it constructed with the bottom and the top, and it was only in more recent times that they found the centrepiece and inserted it in, which makes it over 7 metres tall, the second tallest one in Ireland. Also, the pagan people were sun worshippers originally, because they were very into their farming, and the sun brought about the seasons, so they believed in the sun god. And it was a very easy transition for them to move over into Christianity, when in Ireland we implemented the circle on the cross, which basically is now what we call the Celtic cross. But it was easy for them to worship the cross because the sun symbol was in the cross as well.
Congress is a week-long celebration of faith, and the key component is the celebration of the liturgy. Now, there are many different types of liturgies throughout the week. There was an ecumenical liturgy of the Word, there was a reconciliation service, and a Eucharistic procession. Now, Sebastian Gomes caught up with some of the participants in that procession.
Hi, we're a part of the Eucharistic procession right now, and we caught up with a group of pilgrims from the Vancouver Diocese. This is Carmen Sita here. Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about what's going on here and what you guys are doing?
Oh, we're here for the 50th Eucharistic Congress, and I'm really blessed to be here today. And I was also in Quebec City 4 years ago, and I was in Mexico City 8 years beyond that. And it's a spiritual journey, and it's also a good way to hear the Word of God through all the talks.
And another highlight for us is when Father Thomas Druzika was able to preside over the children's Mass.
This is called an alb, A-L-B. Say it, alb, alb. I'm going to put this on now, watch. And this comes from the Roman times.
Irish footballer Jer Brennan was also present at the Mass, and Sebastian Gomes got to speak with Jer afterwards.
Hi, we're here at the Exposition Hall at the International Eucharistic Congress in Dublin, and joining me to share a few things is Jer Brennan, who's a Gaelic footballer, very well known, very well respected around Ireland, also a practicing Catholic and very involved here at the Congress. One of the things that you're involved with, Jer, was the kids' Mass that Father Tom presided over. We saw you were an unexpected part of the homily there and a Eucharistic minister. Tell us about that experience.
Yeah, that was a great experience. You know, the guys organising it, well, a guy Ray McManus, you know, he's been running ministries, children's Mass for 20 years, so I was delighted when he asked me to get involved. But the Mass that Father Tom presided over, it was about, you know, the whole message of salt and light, that we are the salt.
Very appropriate for us.
Exactly, very appropriate for you. You know, I'm sure some of your viewers have seen the clips from the Mass already, but, you know, it was a great sense of fun, great sense of excitement, a great sense of energy, and for me, kind of, you know, coming away from it, you know, that affirmation and that great joy kind of walking out of the building saying, you know what, that was really cool, I'm very forced to be a part of, there's something great going on. And meeting yourself, Father Tom, you know, very wise and, you know, very intuitive guys, you know, so it was a very enjoyable experience for me, yeah.
Great. What do you make of the Congress as a whole so far? I mean, what have you seen just walking around the grounds and attending some of the Catechesis and stuff like that?
It's like a music festival, I guess. You know, it's a music festival, but, you know, instead of, as I was drinking drugs, there's God, there's tea, there's sandwiches. You know, there's you know, one of the highlights is certainly meeting loads of old friends, making new friends, and listening to people's own faith stories and faith journeys, chatting over a cup of tea, and kind of, you know, when the penny drops, you're like, wow, I actually have that. I've had that experience, and I'm having that experience now, and so it is very affirming for me listening to those people and making those connections. So, you know, there's a great sense of gathering, the diversity of people from Ireland, the diversity of people from all over the world coming together in communion in the one place to share their faith, to share in the Holy Mass, and again, just a great sense of joy, a real spiritual high. And, you know, it's just so great to belong to the church, to belong to the church in Ireland, the Universal Church, and to be part of this wonderful occasion.
For the young adults, there was also the Chiara Luce Youth Space, and Krista Matrenko was able to speak with the director for that program.
Tell us what the Congress has to offer for young people.
Well, this is actually the first ever Eucharistic Congress that we've had a space designated especially for young people. So I think it's great hope for the church here in Ireland that we've actually taken the time, put in the hard work, we've appointed youth officers and volunteers designated just to the youth space because we want to invest in our young people, and we really just have so much hope for the present and the future church. So we've been joining in for Holy Mass and for some of the workshops, but usually in the morning and the evening we've had our own special programme. So we've had catechesis with different bishops. They've flown in from all over the world. We have an Irish bishop speaking to us tonight, actually, so that's actually, I think, the first time that we have an Irish bishop with us in the youth space. We have music by Elation Ministries. We have got workshops by loads of different topics, loads of different speakers. So we're really just getting time to hang with other people in their faith. There's loads of time just to relax and have coffee and chill as well, and there's loads of time of prayer. Yeah, so we've got our own little programme, and it's going really, really well, and it's been really well attended so far.
Now, another major component that pilgrims look forward to are the catechesis sessions. Bishops are called from around the world to give a catechesis talk on the main stage every day. Lay people were also called on to give witness and share their faith stories. At the closing Mass, participants and viewers heard one particularly powerful testimony.
Now we're going to talk to another witness, and this time it's a wonderful young woman called Maeve Carlin. She's from Lurgan in County Armagh, and Maeve was at World Youth Day in Madrid last year, having the time of her life when disaster struck. Maeve, tell us what happened.
On the 17th of August last summer, I was crossing the road and a taxi going through a red light knocked me down. And I was left critically debilitated, and over the past 10 months I've been working really hard to rebuild strength and have been learning to walk again. And I really think that, although it's been very challenging at times, it has, enabled me to develop a whole new appreciation for life.
Now, the fact that you were at World Youth Day means that your faith was obviously important to you anyway, but what difference has this all made?
Well, someone once said that when God closes a door, he opens a window, and I've just been blessed with so many graces this year. Like I've been, I've recently joined Elation Ministries. I've been able to begin a prayer group in my local area at home, where we now have 80 young people that come religiously every week to just celebrate and, worship God, and it's just an amazing. It's been just an amazing opportunity to really help others come to know God in the way that I have through the cross I've been given to carry. And when I think about this year, I often think of the words of St. Catherine of Siena: be who God wants you to be and you will set the world on fire. And I'm me with my broken bones and my disability, but I just feel that hopefully my witness to God and my experiences will help me to spark the fire of the faith of other young people.
Now, personally, for me, one of the highlights was when Archbishop Michael Miller of Vancouver gave his catechesis in the middle of the week. No matter where I am in the world, Archbishop Miller is always my bishop.
3 years ago, talking to a gathering of religious and clergy and lay people in his own diocese, the Bishop of Rome, Benedict, said this: besides encouraging a renewal in spiritual life, he went on to say something very important. It is necessary to improve pastoral structures in such a way that the co-responsibility of all members of the people of God in their entirety is gradually promoted, with respect for the vocations and for the respective roles of the consecrated and of lay people.
But perhaps one of the most moving catechesis moments was delivered by Archbishop Luis Tagle of Manila.
How come the world is as divided as ever? Now, my answer is this: because Jesus is not the word that they share and they receive. Just to give you some examples, when financial wizards talk about ways of manipulating the economy or the market for their own profit, you do not call that communion. That is corruption. And that exchange happens very often. When politicians talk to people about grand promises without intending to fulfill them, You do not call that communion. That is cheating. That is cheating the people. When the powerful people and even nations negotiate among themselves while neglecting the weak, you do not call that communion. You call that oppression. And when so-called enterprising persons deal with each other on how women and children could be profitable merchandise or commodities, definitely that is not communion. That is slavery. When communion consists in Jesus, who is the Word of life, only then will the common good arise. Only then will communion happen in our midst. And the world will be pleasing to God. God will be happy.
Wow, powerful stuff.
You're right, Sheridan. That was one of the most beautiful moments on the
Yes.
main stage. But one of the most unique Irish features of this Congress was the music. And Chris Dimitrenko was able to speak to the woman who coordinated all of the choirs that came from different corners of Ireland for this event.
We've told you a lot about the catechists, the speakers, the homilists here at the Eucharistic Congress, but so much of this event is the music. And I'm here with Jermaine Carlos, who is the coordinator of the choirs for the Congress. Jermaine, that must be a massive undertaking.
It is an extraordinary journey. We as far as last year, we sent out an invitation to choirs in all of Ireland, inviting them to come and take part in the Eucharistic Congress. And there's been a huge response from all parts of Ireland. So we have what we call our pilgrim choirs, who are church choirs, smaller church choirs, and what we wanted them to come was to come and join in the liturgy and sing their hearts out. And the Archbishop of Dublin, this is what he wanted, was congregational singing, and I hope and I think we may have achieved that. We then have Congress choirs, who are the bigger or more senior choirs singing at the liturgy, at the Mass on the altar, and they have come again from all parts of Ireland, and dioceses who've made up of smaller choirs and groups of people from all over.
And there have also been a number of gospel choirs, tenors who have been there, the Irish priests. Tell us about some of the other different kinds of music that we've been hearing over this past week.
Well, we've had a huge response, which in the last number of years has got big in Ireland, which are gospel choirs. And they have come from as far as south of Ireland, to the north of Ireland, to the west of Ireland. And I know for people think Ireland is such a small country, to us it's like they're coming from a very long way when they come from the west of Ireland over to Dublin, which is the east coast of Ireland. So we've had a great response from gospel choirs, older, younger groups. We have a group on Sunday singing at the Stasio Orbis.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about the Stasio Orbis, because I'm sure the music will be very special for that big closing Mass.
Well, for the Stasio Orbis, we have about 70 choirs coming from all over Ireland.
70?
70. They're going to do the pilgrim choirs, and they're going to be like a ribbon around the entire stadium, which is our biggest stadium in Ireland. And they're all going to be dressed in black. They're all circling the entire, encasing the area with sound, and they're going to encourage all the congregation to sing. So, but on the altar, we're going to have the diocesan choir, which are called the Congress Choir, and the Palestrina Choir, which are one of the oldest choirs in Dublin from the Archdiocese of men and boys for the last 108 years, liturgical choir, and they are amazing.
Now, Jermaine, I'm going to put you on the spot. No, I'm not going to ask you to sing, but tell me one particular piece of music that we've heard over this past week that is particularly close to you, that you've really loved.
Well, I suppose I've got to go to my day job, which is the Palestrina Choir, and there's been a piece specially commissioned for the Congress, God Has Been Glorified, and it was sung at the closing of the opening ceremonies, and it will be sung again on Sunday, and it's by Colin Morby, and it's the most amazing piece because it involves the congregation singing O Sacrament Most Holy, and then the choir obviously make that a bigger sound, and it's just quite amazing.
Well, thank you very much, Jermaine. And we're going to go now to a clip from that song.
And next up, Chris Dimitrenko takes us on a tour of Jerpoint Abbey.
The Irish Church is experiencing a painful trial as it seeks to rebuild trust after the abuse crisis. But it has survived adversity before and been reborn anew. The ruins at Jerpoint Abbey recall perhaps its greatest crisis.
Well, Jerpoint Abbey was one of a number of different abbeys and kind of groups that would have come to Europe when the Normans very much came over, basically in the 1100s. So it was like the new way of teaching religion, and that's how these abbeys were formed. Yeah, unfortunately, in the 1500s with King Henry VIII and the Reformation, a lot of these old monasteries basically were given a choice, I suppose. You could be destroyed or change religion. And unfortunately, Jerpoint Abbey fell to the first choice, which it was destroyed. The windows would have been knocked out, the roof taken down or burnt out and things like that. So basically it was uninhabitable again. In essence, in adversity, sometimes you do have an underground swell of belief. It was very difficult to change their ways. So there was penal laws introduced in Ireland to suppress the Catholic religion, but that only made it stronger. And in the 1800s, when Catholic emancipation came about, they were allowed to build the churches again and things like that. So a lot of the Catholic churches would be a bit more modern than the Anglican ones.
There's also lots to see and do beyond the main stage. There's many exhibits to visit, and one that caught our eye in particular was an exhibit that takes you back in time and shows you what it was like to live in Capernaum at the time of the apostles.
Those who have been to the Holy Land can never read the Bible in the same way again. Here at the International Eucharistic Congress in Dublin, they've reconstructed the town of Capernaum to give pilgrims here a real sense of what it was like 2,000 years ago in Galilee. Father Thomas Rosica has joined me now, and we're going to take a tour through this exhibit, so come on in.
Holy crow, look at this.
Father Tom, you lived in the Holy Land for a while.
Amazing.
What do you think about this?
Wow, it feels like Capernaum. It really feels like the village. You know, the village is, you've been there, you live there too, and the village is all ruins now. You see piles of stones and the dwellings, and the synagogue in Capernaum is there now with the beautiful church of the Panis Vitae that's built over the octagonal house, and this is very good. You get a real good feel. I mean, I recommend going, but for those who can't go, this is a great way to get a feel for Capernaum. You know, I can see why they chose reconstructing Capernaum here, because the centerpiece of Capernaum is, of course, the synagogue. That's the synagogue that's built on the ruins of the synagogue that the Roman centurion built for Jesus and for the community.
You can still see the foundation stones, I think.
It's right there, and there's a little sign there, the black
right.
basalt stones, and of course you have the 6th century synagogue above, and those majestic pillars in the entrance. And you know, it was in this synagogue that the great teaching on the Eucharist was given. No wonder why they put this here for the Eucharistic Congress. This is where Jesus proclaimed, "I am the bread of life."
Now, Father Tom, we know that Jesus went to the synagogue often, and he actually taught, didn't he, on some occasions?
You know, there's two wonderful moments in the scriptures. First of all, we have the scene in Luke chapter 4. That's kind of like the programmatic scene of the gospel. And Jesus goes in the synagogue in the town where he had been raised, and he arrives there on the Sabbath day. He takes open the scroll, opens it up to Isaiah chapter 61, and he begins to read, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for the Lord has anointed me He has sent me to bring good news to the poor. He starts quoting the Jubilee text. Then he closes the scroll, rolls it back, gives it to the attendant, and he tells them, today these words are fulfilled in your hearing. Now, a couple minutes after that, they take him outside and they want to throw him over the hill and kill him for blasphemy or whatever. But I mean, this synagogue in Nazareth is very important. But the synagogue in Capernaum, that Jesus gave the great teaching on the Eucharist. I am the bread of life. He who comes to me shall never hunger. He who believes in me shall never thirst.
John chapter 6.
Hey, you studied well. Well, you did a good job at Collegeville doing theology. I mean, at least they taught you the important texts. And you also, how long did you live there?
I was there for 1 month doing a study tour. It was incredible.
And you went to, what did you remember from Galilee?
Well, I remember the Beatitudes, the hillside, the natural amphitheater where Jesus would have stood up, and talked down to the crowds. Yeah. Looking over the lake was so peaceful, was so still. It really hit home when you go there and experience it yourself.
You know, once you go there, you never read the Bible in the same way. It's sort of like virtual reality. You read these texts, sometimes I hear the texts, I read them myself, I proclaim them in church, and I see the scene passing before me, and I can't shut the film off. It's there. The images are so clear, and I'll never read the Bible in the same way. I just thank God that part of my studies were done in Jerusalem and in Galilee.
No, that's true. You really get the sense that the evangelists did everything deliberately, and you really pick that up when you go there. You see the little things, the little nuances, the little points that they want to make about the significance of this place, or the significance of that person, or the significance of this conversation. And it's something, it just changes your whole reading of the scriptures.
I got to admit, Sebastian, Jesus had a great sense of location. I mean, when I go to the Mount of the Beatitudes and stand there and overlook the Sea of Galilee, I say, what a place to teach the Beatitudes. He didn't do it in the classroom, but it was in that natural amphitheater overlooking the Holy See, if you will.
The military also had a presence at the Congress. Sebastian Gomes takes us on a reconnaissance mission.
Hi, we're here with Father Robert, who's a chaplain with the Defence Forces of Ireland, and you have a chapel here, what we call a field chapel.
We have our field chapel here, and we're inviting people to come in and say a little prayer for soldiers who are overseas and for the chaplains who are serving overseas. We also have some tents displaying some of our work as chaplains, praying for our soldiers every day, praying with our soldiers when we can, and when operational situations allow us to.
Why is it important to have something like this at an international Eucharistic Congress?
Well, because there's 5,000 people coming from other countries. Yesterday, with the Bishop of Tyre in Lebanon came. We have been patrolling in Lebanon since 1979, and Jesus would have passed through the Wadi Saluki on his way up to Tyre and Sidon. Yesterday's reading from Elijah going to the Sidonian town of Zarephath. Irish soldiers have been on patrol in that area since 1979 and have been helping communities in that part of the world be safe and secure. And people came to us yesterday from Tibneen to say thank you for Irish peacekeepers in Lebanon. We had some sisters who came from Liberia especially for the Congress, and we used to deliver books to them.
Let's go over here right now and take a look at some of the things that we have here, as well as the chapel itself.
Outside our chapel we have some shrapnel which has been fashioned into, designed to impact on houses, designed to impact on people and communities. And this was made by our ordnance personnel so that it could be an instrument of prayer. The focus of soldiers in their shooting is indirect fire here with the brass, the artillery shells sending something indirectly. Here we have direct focus on Christ at the center. And we have the shells here, all the bullets and the rounds are pointing away from the focus, which is at the center, Christ at the center. That's a little monstrance made in Lebanon by soldiers. We've got a holy water font. Everybody's laughing and chatting about the fact that, gosh, there's holy water over there at the chaplaincy. So, do you want to pop in?
Yes, let's take a look.
we have soldiers in so many different parts of the world. Since 1958, Irish soldiers have been keeping peace in different parts of the world, and the prayers that they might say in the local chapel, if they don't have a chaplain with them, if they're smaller than a battalion, they would pop into the chapel or the church in the area where they are and might light a candle. And they value the fact that there is some place where they have two things, time and space. For soldiers, they rarely get enough of it, time and space. And this is the place where nobody will say to anybody in the chapel, "What are you doing in here?" That people can come in here and have the quiet prayer. For me, as a priest, to be able to start the day as well before the Lord, to have the quiet prayer early in the day because it's cool. When you're overseas, we mightn't have candles like these overseas because they'd melt. Our altar breads, we have to keep them in the fridge in the kitchen because the altar breads will grow humid and they'll just become all soggy. So you learn different tricks when you're chaplain overseas as to how to keep the altar wine in the fridge as well. You have to keep improvising little ways as well of inviting soldiers to make the quiet time for prayer. Sometimes they do it out of necessity when they get a Skype little message or they get a text message that a member of their family is sick, and they say, I just got a message, can you say a little prayer with me? I'd love if you could say a little prayer with me. And we pop over to the chapel, say the prayer, and that means so much to the soldier who might be going on patrol for the next week and who won't have any communication with his family. Or it means a lot to the family at home in Ireland who might be burying a friend of this soldier, and to know that at the same time as the funeral in County Cork, that the friends of this person being buried have gathered in an overseas chapel and are celebrating Mass and praying in solidarity. That's communion with Christ, with one another.
Father, thank you so much. Would you mind leading us in a prayer for all those who suffer in the midst of war and strife, for refugees, for displaced peoples, for persecuted peoples around the world?
I will indeed. I will indeed. Let's take the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven.
You know, Sheridan, though, I was once told that any good pilgrimage leaves room for fun.
Yes.
And Father Thomas Rosica went walking through the exhibition hall, and he did some shopping.
Now, there's something for everybody in this Catholic supermarket here at this exposition hall at the International Eucharistic Congress in Dublin. And here we are at a very interesting display in a little store. When I was little, we all would play Mass. Now, but I played the Second Vatican Council Mass of Paul VI. And as we know, the Holy Father, Pope Benedict, has granted permission for the extraordinary form. And we have here truly an extraordinary setup of Mass. We have Mass in the extraordinary form with the priest. We have one of his assistants, one of his many assistants. We have special vestments that are offered here. And it's one opportunity to do some serious shopping here at Catholic Exposition Hall at the International Eucharistic Congress. Truly extraordinary. Now, I've gone shopping again during the Eucharistic Congress, and this time I ended up big time. This is a top-of-the-line store at the Slabink booth. Those of us who are priests know about the top-quality vestments made by Slabink of Belgium. But did you ever imagine that on Salt and Light television you will meet the descendant, the great-grandson of Henri Slabink out of Bruges in Belgium? Matthias, thanks for having us this morning.
Thank you for coming, and those were very kind words on our company. I thank you. Thank you.
Now, the only complaint I have is this stuff is really expensive stuff, you know, but it's worth it. It's solid stuff. And you've got something for everybody. We see here the extraordinary form vestments. These are pretty cool, they're very expensive, and you know what these talk about? They talk about the tradition of the church, the beautiful, rich tradition of liturgy. Some of us have purchased these vestments here. Now, come and take a look. Matthias, come here. How are these vestments made?
Well, they're made in our workshop in Bruges, Belgium. And so this is a hand-embroidered chasuble with a pelican. And so in our workshop in Bruges, we have in total, well, we employ 64 people, but we have 40 women in the workshop who make these vestments. And everything is done in one central location. So every Slabink vestment you see anywhere in the world is made in Bruges, Belgium.
This is a very beautiful vestment, and of course the symbol that we have here is the pelican. The pelican, an ancient Christian symbol, O Pie Pelicane, and from St. Thomas Aquinas' beautiful hymn to the Eucharist, the pelican which pierces itself in the breast, and it feeds its young with its blood. What a beautiful Eucharistic symbol. Now, I've never seen a bishop's mitre so small as this.
Well,
it's for a humble bishop.
Well, actually, the original shape, if you look at the very old, designs or sketches of the first bishops, they were wearing very low mitres. It's only later on in church history that the mitres have gone larger and larger, and so in a way we are trying to find the roots back of the original vestments. And it is also true that for a shorter bishop, it is sometimes better to wear a shorter mitre, because a very large mitre would make him look even smaller. So
that's a very important, for a shorter bishop, a smaller mitre, because a larger mitre will make him look smaller. That's important wisdom coming from Belgium.
The total height, of course, of the mitre might be taller, but in relation, the mitre might look so tall on his head that it would look even smaller. So if you have a shorter mitre on a smaller bishop, it will make him look, everything will be more in proportion, and it will be more elegant. And that's also important, to have the right mitre on the right.
What's the significance of a mitre? Can you tell us what this represents?
Well, the mitre, of course, is worn by the bishop, by bishops and cardinals and abbots of monasteries. So it is a sign of their dignity and their function. And of course, it comes back from the early Roman church, as do all vestments. All vestments have a origin in the clothes and the garments that the Romans wore. And of course that has evolved into church tradition, but that's where it all comes from.
So as you can see, here at the Slabink booth at the International Eucharistic Congress in Dublin, we struck gold by meeting the great-grandson of Henri Slabink, who are the manufacturers of beautiful liturgical items, vestments, monstrances, and mitres for short bishops.
A special note of pride for us Canadians was that the Canadians were the largest delegation, numbering 1,200, and Sebastian got to speak with some of those pilgrims.
Could you tell us your name?
Lorraine Tellier.
And where are you from, Lorraine?
Langley, BC.
And what did you think about the Catechesis with Archbishop Miller this afternoon?
Awesome. I've got his CD already. It was so special.
Oh,
good. He's a powerful speaker. We just love him.
We've run into a delegation from the Toronto Diocese. This is Femi and his wife Rose from Mississauga. What parish are you from, Femi?
St. John of the Cross on Glenary, Mississauga.
And what brought you to Dublin for the Congress?
Well, we came to look at the Eucharistic Congress to have a spirit-filled environment for 8 days. We were in Quebec 4 years ago, and it was a nice experience. So the charging for the last 4 years should have gone down, so we came here to renew the Eucharistic feeling again for the next 4 years.
Great. Is there something particular that you're looking forward to at the Congress this week?
Well, the Congress is like a spiritual Olympics for Catholics, where you come all over the world, everybody brings their own idea, and you experience the spirit feel. Eucharistic is the key point of Catholicism in celebration of Mass. So seeing people from all over the world every 4 years like an Olympic is a nice thing for every Catholic to be there. So I'm happy I'm able to make it.
There were also many special events specifically for Canadians. There were 2 masses, one celebrated by Archbishop Albert Legat of St. Boniface. It was really for all English-speaking pilgrims, but Canadians in particular. And a second mass celebrated by Archbishop Terence Prendergast of Ottawa, and that one was in the extraordinary form. Just another way to show that there's many different ways to be Catholic and Eucharistic all at the same time. And there was also a special informal gathering with Canadians and all of the Canadian bishops who were present during the week. And it was really just a chance for the pilgrims to get to know these bishops that they've heard about but haven't ever really met before, and a chance for the pilgrims to get to know each other.
The impact of any major international gathering such as the International Eucharistic Congress or World Youth Day can't be measured instantly. Ultimately, the seeds of faith are sown, but we won't see the fruits till years later. Sebastian Gomes got to speak with a group from Turkmenistan who shared their story with us.
Outside of Ireland, Canada has the largest delegation of pilgrims here at the International Eucharistic Congress. But the country that has the greatest presence here per capita is actually Turkmenistan, a predominantly Muslim country in Central Asia that has sent an incredible 12% of its Catholics here to Dublin.
Almost 20 years I work in former Soviet Republic. 3 years was in Kiev, in Ukraine, and now, since almost 16 years, I am in Turkmenistan, in Ashgabat, in the capital of Turkmenistan. We are Oblates of Mary Immaculate, so we are to bring the good news to poor people, to people who didn't hear good news, the gospel. Every day we celebrate the Eucharist. Every Sunday in Russian. Now it's about 80 people in the morning, 10 o'clock in the evening for English-speaking Catholics.
This church in Turkmenistan was reborn. Now it's over 100 people, but still a small church. But if we remember, the beginning was no one. Now it's over 100. It means there is, I think, it's big dynamic in this country.
Of course, majority is Muslim. We have in the country Orthodox, 12 Orthodox parishes, and of course there are some free churches, Protestant communities. We are not meaningful as number, but our presence is quite meaningful. We are 150 people, 150. Somebody is asking 1,000, no, just 150 souls. We are very happy that our people has possibility to come to Europe, to see churches, to see priests, monks, sisters in the Kazakhs. Some never saw the real church. This experience, and of course, experience of Catholicity, of the church is universal, that there are more Catholics than 140 in the world. So we see them here. So this experience that we are in this family, in big family of Roman Catholic Church, it makes us happy.
So the closest Catholic community is about over 1,000 kilometers. You have to go to another country, and for them, is, as Father Andrzej said, it's very important to feel that we are not some sect. We are the part of the Catholic Church. This is very important because if you live only alone, you are thinking that you are alone. Nobody is interested about me. But no, the church is bigger than our community, but sometimes we have to feel.
We don't know what the impact of this Eucharistic Congress will be, but we can turn the pages back and take a look at the Eucharistic Congress that was hosted in Dublin in 1932.
And if you can believe it, Chris Dimitrenko actually tracked down someone who had attended the Congress in 1932.
I understand that you were at the Eucharistic Congress in 1932, is that right?
Yes, yes. As a matter of fact, I'm 88. And I went to school as a schoolboy from my school in little little long trousers that time.
And you still remember it well, I hope?
Oh, God. It was great. And there was a great singer there that day. John McCormack. It was really lovely. Bigger altogether than this.
Now you went as a small boy, but now I see that you've brought your family with you here today.
Oh yes, I have 7 sons and 3 girls.
Of course, as media, we have a unique perspective. We work long days and the pace is hectic and the work is intense. And of course, our editors do a miraculous job of weaving it all together just in time. Now, our own crew, who we affectionately refer to as Team Dublin, recently sat down to look back on that week and what they got out of it.
What a wonderful mosaic that was of the International Eucharistic Congress in Ireland, in Dublin, 2012. We're back here in Canada now, and I've gathered together the team that was with me in Ireland to bring you this outstanding coverage. It was probably our most significant coverage of the past 10 years of Salt and Light. So we have Sebastian Gomes, Joshua Lanzarini, Chris Dimitrenko, and the man behind the camera who's filming this, David LaRosse, just to kind of recap the event, but not so much to tell you in detail each event, but to say what this event meant for us, because it had a great impact on each one of us. So, Chris Dimitrenko, you've been with us on many foreign trips on these great expeditions. What was so special about the Eucharistic Congress in Dublin?
Well, I really felt that it was the whole world coming in solidarity with the church in Ireland, with the struggles that they have been having, and we were all there and being a part of it together. And certainly a big highlight for me was the Eucharistic procession. It was one of those moments where I was able to stop and to not have to work the event, but to actually just join the procession prayerfully. Remember, they said a reading over the loudspeaker about the disciples following Jesus, and here we were very literally, all of us together from around the world following Jesus. And it was a really beautiful, profound moment, and hopefully a witness to the rest of Ireland.
Joshua, normally you don't appear on these programs. You're the guy in the background. You're the one that's doing all of the technical stuff. You're the webmaster, you're the artistic designer, the graphic designer. But we brought you with us to make sure that our connection to social media was really on top of things.
Absolutely.
And I must say, watching you work day and night, you were there. Tell me what this thing meant for you. What did this event mean for you?
I had no expectations when I got there. I mean, a lot of people say that it's a World Youth Day for all people, but it isn't. The talks, the joy of everyone that was there, everything was so well, even liturgically, everything was so well designed to bring people back to Christ. One of the things I really enjoyed the most was the prayer space, which I'm sure we've seen images from it, of the Canadian Mass. And it was a beautiful prayer space, beautiful colors, beautiful lighting, and it was the place, I think, that it was the one you are drawn to go because you want to meditate, and especially us working all day, very intense hours, you really desire, you really thirst for a moment of quietness, and that was the most beautiful place you could go. So I think that was one of the things that I enjoyed the most when I was there. But as you mentioned about social media, that gave me an opportunity to follow the talks, because by following the talks I share some of the quotes that from some of the speakers. It gave me an opportunity to share that through Facebook, through Twitter, through the blog. So it also took me to that level of understanding of what everything was.
Do you realize how many people around the world were hanging on every word you posted?
I guess so, yes. I mean, I realized that a lot of people were retweeting things. I looked at the analytics from our website in 125 countries logged in, and looked at the live streaming, looked at the blog posts. We were probably one of the only ones that posting the talks for the speakers. So we had a lot of visits from around the world, yeah.
Sebastian Gomes, you were the great surprise for us on this trip. This is your first expedition. You're the new kid on the block. You joined us in December. And all I can say is, wow, you went wild in this. I mean, we let you loose and we sent you into the masses. But I also watched that you weren't just performing or acting. This whole event really affected you. What did it mean for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, you really just have to be yourself, you know, at things like this. And, you know, you try to take it all in. It's a lot to take in. There were so many different things going on. But, you know, having studied history, I'm always so enamored by different countries and different cultures that have, you know, a deep, deep sense of Christianity, you know, in their very being, you know. So touring around Ireland, seeing a lot of the different historical sites, but then also learning a little bit about the history of the church in Ireland, the deep seeds that were planted there, you know, very early on, was just profound for me. You know, you really get a sense that you're in touch with the tradition. You know?
You did your master's in theology at St. John's University in Collegeville. You come at this whole event not necessarily from piety or devotion, but with that critical mind of a theologian. Right. So you saw expressions of piety. You were with me as we went shopping on those shopping trips through the Catholic fairgrounds there. Right. And I know your eyebrows were raised a couple times over this. What do you think of all of this? So what's the relationship of the piety and devotion that we saw and theology that you've experienced is so much a part of your life?
Well, I think it comes first down to like the experience that you have. I mean, have you had an authentic experience and encounter with Jesus and with the church? And when it's authentic, when it's something that just lights a fire in you, it moves you to practice some of those more devotional things, to understand the piety, to understand and really watch out for the reverential aspects of the different liturgies and different things that we do. But it really, you know, it's about the experience that you can have, that you can be introduced to through, you know, a critical understanding of the tradition, through you know, just speaking with somebody who's clearly, you know, someone who's very filled with the Spirit, and that sort of helps grow the more pious and devotional stuff.
Joshua, as we watched the catechists and the testimonies delivered in that assembly in the stadium, sometimes under driving rain, as we went to the smaller talks and whatever, what's the purpose of those catechesis moments at an event like this?
I think, I mean, I personally loved many of the catechesis.
Anyone in particular that struck you?
Well, I loved Archbishop Tagler's catechesis. We had an opportunity over the week to meet him personally and to go out with him, and so I had an opportunity to meet him personally. But even for those who didn't meet personally Archbishop Tagler, his way of communicating, his way of breaking the theology to communicate it for everybody, you know, not for those who do not have a theology degree, for those who do not understand the complexity of the church. But his way of communicating, which includes also that emotional, he transports you emotionally. And so I really enjoyed Archbishop Tagler, and he spoke beautifully about the communion of the church and about friendship. But many of the other testimonies, you know, there were personal stories of people, and people are inspired by that. I think people are inspired by the struggle and the resurrection of a person.
Chris, we had an opportunity to speak to the speakers outside of the big sessions, and we were privileged in the hotels we were staying in and kind of rubbing elbows and shoulders with these great figures of the church, men and women. What does all that mean? Is that a necessary part of covering these events?
Well, it was certainly a surprise when we'd go to the hotel where most of the bishops were staying, because it was like Vatican North. You'd go into the lobby and you'd never know who you were going to see. I mean, maybe it will be Cardinal McCarrick, maybe it will be Cardinal Dolan, you know, you bump into some of the Canadian bishops. And so that was really fun whenever you'd step in there to see who was there. And always, you know, mingling with the pilgrims, discussing what had gone on during the past day. And so that was really beautiful to see that they were available and accessible, and you get to see their personal side as well.
David LaRosse, cameraman, you don't usually appear on these shows, but you were certainly involved in this. I saw you hauling around that equipment up and down those bleachers and from church to church and event to event. What did this event mean for you?
Well, I mean, I've been to well, I went to the Eucharistic Congress in Quebec City, so for me, the first thing that struck me was the difference. There was almost twice as many people. The event was, it was structured differently. It wasn't in a dark arena. It was kind of like out in, it's almost like the city on the hill type thing. I've been to World Youth Days as well. It's not really an old person's World Youth Day. I can't say that, that's true. But it was a great experience, and it was in Ireland, and that's, you know, my ancestors come from Ireland, so.
Father Tom, you were there with us too. What did it mean for you to be there?
Thanks for asking. I have to admit that I went with rather low expectations of what was going to happen for a variety of reasons. You know, it wasn't at the same scale as the World Youth Day or the Eucharistic Congress in Quebec. The problems in Ireland and the sadness that was there, we certainly saw the event panned and almost discredited by the Irish press. And so I said, okay, Lord, use us. We're going. Through the generosity of the Irish government, we were able to get our act together and to go. But I was deeply moved throughout the whole event. And I think part of it had to do with the situation of Ireland at present, the extraordinary welcome of the Irish towards us. It was really extraordinary. And then what really blew my mind is in the hotel where I was staying. I was staying at the hotel where the bishops and cardinals and a lot of the speakers were, because I was one of the speakers myself. And the welcome of Salt and Light, it was very, very humbling that after 10 years we realized that we're not just playing to a Canadian audience, we got the English-speaking world and the greater world kind of depending on us. And the testimonies that we heard about our work, and I just said, thank you, Jesus. And then meeting some of these figures, the people who gave the Catechesis talk, certainly Archbishop Luis Antonio Tagle is one of my heroes, a real role model for me. But we were privileged to do those 6 witness interviews. We didn't go with a schedule, because when you go to these events, you got to fly by the seat of your pants. And the witness interviews was one better than the other. It was extraordinary. You guys were with me, and the spirit that was there and the communion that we shared. I found the liturgies, the Irish Church prepared magnificent liturgies, beautiful liturgies in the spirit of the Second Vatican Council, the music, the silence, the reverence, the symbols, those bowls of incense going through the stadium. It was very, very moving for me. It was exhausting, as usually these things are. The other thing I really enjoyed is what happened among us. That we were there, and when you go to these events, we work very hard. We also pray, and God bless Ireland for Guinness. I mean, in the evenings, we were able to, I never enjoyed Guinness as much as I did. I don't usually stay up that late at night. I'm gone at 11 o'clock at night, but we were working with editing and transmitting and sending things FTP and doing this. And then we came together, and we had bishops and archbishops join us, and the staff and our colleague journalists from the London Tablet and the Catholic Herald and Vatican, and then our interview with Archbishop Charles Brown, the new nuncio, the boy nuncio of Ireland, that brilliant young man who's got roots here in Toronto. He studied at the Pontifical Institute of Medieval Studies here, so it was really nice to see him again. For me, it really shook me, the event. It brought me back to the center and how much we have to be in solidarity with the Irish Church.
And I think that's exactly right. Like, I didn't know what to expect either, because like you said, it was my first trip. But I can say that probably the 10 or 15 top highlights for me were things that weren't, in the program, like the Pilgrim Guide that we were handed on the first day. And it started before the Congress. We had that magnificent dinner that Tourism Ireland put on for us that we couldn't stop talking about for the whole week, seeing all these different historical sites. But then, like you said, just meeting those people, and then the moments, behind the cameras, when the cameras are turned off, just moments of communion and of solidarity, of just meeting people and seeing where they're at with, so many different things, and sharing the experiences and sharing the perspectives. It was mind-blowing for me at times, but it's something I really, really cherish.
Joshua, you're into Google Analytics and the studying of how many people downloaded a particular page or a video. And Chris, you know about the social media, how many people are responding to us. But from another perspective, how do we measure the success or the effectiveness, or what I would call the depth of penetration of an event like this? How do we measure? Like we have World Youth Days under our belt. We've got the Eucharistic Congress in Quebec. We've got all these other events. How do we measure, how do we determine if this event bears fruit and will bear fruit?
Well, I think that what we don't do is look exclusively at how the media was covering the event, as if the Irish media wasn't covering it, then it didn't happen. Well, it did happen, and I think that we need to look at what happened in the lives of the participants. And that was most of my experience of the Congress, was speaking with pilgrims who were there. And as much as you can follow it, through Salt and Light online, being a part of the Congress was really, really meaningful to them. I can't tell you how many pilgrims spoke to me after the Mass about how they were crying during the Mass from this experience of communion. And another thing that people wouldn't have seen on television were those long lineups for all of the workshops. So many workshops were sold out. People were hungry to learn more about the Eucharist and to deepen their experience of the Church.
Joshua, how do we measure?
I agree with Chris. And certainly, analytics do say something about an event. We had 125 countries viewing our website and viewing our blog posts and viewing the live stream, because we were live streaming the whole event. We were the only ones probably live streaming the entire event throughout the world, so that's why we had a lot of people. But besides media, because it's good for us to repeat the signal, to repeat what to broadcast what is being spoken and what is happening. But I think we have to look at what happens at the event itself and how the event is organized. The event was beautifully organized, and as I mentioned before, everything was designed in such a way that it led people to the most important thing, which was the Eucharist, the prayer, and the prayer space always had adoration. But and then you see the results by the joy. Everybody was joyful. Everybody you bumped in had a positive experience. Everybody had a positive message, and everyone was joyful. And I think that's what we have to bring home. We have to bring back the joy. And if it has a good depth of penetration and reaches the heart, then we bring that home, and that's going to be the best broadcast that we can do. Spreading that message that stays in our heart.
Sebastian, how do you measure? How do we measure, in your theological mind? How do we measure an event like this?
I think what Joshua just said was exactly right about the joy. I can see, I haven't worked here very long, but I can see the trail that we're on at Salt and Light is a very balanced, joyful, hopeful kind of path. And it's hard sometimes to stay on that path because there are different tensions pulling you this way and that way. We could look at the world, if we step back for a second, we see all these disastrous things going on, and we think, oh my gosh, where do we go from here? But I think if you have some perspective, I think if you, stay humble, stay happy, stay joyful, remember the message, that we've often talked, the tomb is empty kind of thing, right? So let's put a smile on our face and move forward. And so then when we went to Ireland, we just shared that experience with so many other pilgrims. We became pilgrims ourselves, like you were saying, and just took in, we're enlivened by a lot of the things that were going on. So it sort of worked together. The program was very well done. The liturgies, like you said, were exceptional. Everybody came with an open heart, with an open mind. We were touched by it, they were touched by it, so the final product is just something magnificent.
Should let them in on our little secret about the tomb. We've got so many doomsayers and people that are announcing calamity and destruction, and the church is in chaos, and there's leaks at the Vatican, and there's scandals all over the world, all of which are true, and it's one big mess. But I have this conviction that I operate by, that there is a tomb in Jerusalem, and it is empty. No matter how bad the things are, he has conquered death. He has conquered sin and death. And that alone keeps me going, and I think keeps us going at Salt and Light. That we are here to announce the resurrection. And we're doing that, not denying the fact that it took a couple events to get to the resurrection. There was a Good Friday, and there was a Passion, and a suffering and death. And I think the Eucharistic Congress was the herald of a new springtime. It wasn't clearly spring, and it certainly wasn't summer, but it's the herald of a new springtime, and I have a bond with Ireland now that I didn't know existed. So maybe that whole thing about Irish eyes are smiling, our Irish hearts were also smiling too. So I want to thank each of you, Sebastian, Joshua, Chris, David, and all of our friends who worked at Salt and Light. And I want to thank all of you for your support. We've received an avalanche of messages, of letters, of phone calls over our coverage of the International Eucharistic Congress, not just from Canada, but from many places in the world. That's what we're about at Salt and Light. I want to thank the Irish Tourism Board, the Irish government, I want to thank particularly Cardinal Sean Brady, the Primate of all of Ireland, the Archbishop of Armagh, who extended his arms and his welcome and his real care for us each day that we were there, and his magnificent homily that was given at the Mass on the Thursday of that week was an extraordinary witness to the power of reconciliation, the power of hope, and the meaning of this whole Eucharistic Congress. Thank you very much for joining us. God bless. Thanks for your support.
And that was our amazing Team Dublin, who did such a phenomenal job.
Yes, incredible. What they were able to pull off and to send to us was just fantastic.
Now, the final highlight of the week was the announcement of the next host city.
I would like to invite you to join in praying for God's blessing upon the next International Eucharistic Congress, which will take place in 2016 in the city of Cebu.
Cebu City is the second largest metropolis in the Philippines and the oldest Spanish settlement in the country. The Magellan Cross was erected in 1521, the year Ferdinand Magellan discovered the area, and the same year the King of Cebu was baptized. The Catholic faith became the center of Cebuan life. As some Cebuans explain, it remains that way to this day.
I was just there 3 months ago, and when I visit the chapel for adoration, I see common people, you know, ordinary people. This chapel that I go to is just a small room, dark, no ventilation, and yet they stay there for as long as they need Jesus.
Cebuanos, as people of Cebu are called, or the Filipinos for that matter, people of the Philippines, are very prayerful and have very, very strong faith. We find expressions of our faith in devotions, like devotion to the infant Jesus, devotion to the Blessed Mother, devotion to the saints. We find expressions in symbols as opposed to things cerebral. We find expressions to stuff that appeal to the senses, like processions, candles, music, song. People of the Philippines or people of Cebu also have great reverence for the sacred, for the Blessed Sacrament. They have high respects for the clergy and the religious, very hospitable people as well. We're known throughout the world as a very, very hospitable people, and I'm sure with the next Congress being held in Cebu, people of Cebu will be pulling all stops to celebrate this event and welcome the pillars of the church as well as all other participants.
Being the host of the next Eucharistic Congress is a gift, according to Archbishop Louis Tagle.
First of all, we would really want to express to the Holy Father and the committee for bringing the Eucharistic Congress back to Asia and specifically to the Philippines. Now, we would like to think that this is not just for the Philippines, even if it is a special grace to the Philippines, but it is for Asia too. And knowing that half of the Christian population of Asia, that big continent, that huge continent, the biggest continent in the world, half of the Christian population is in the Philippines. Now, you know, a few years ago, the Plenary Assembly of the Asian Bishops focused on living the Eucharist in Asia. And it was held in Manila. Not knowing that in a few years, the great Eucharistic Congress will be held in the Philippines, where the bishops of Asia gathered with some lay and religious delegates to reflect on the Eucharist and how to live it in this vast continent of diversity and even of division.
We hope you've enjoyed reliving this festival of faith. Until next time, I'm Sheridan Sanders.
And I'm Alicia Ambrosio.
See you in Cebu.